It was a warm afternoon, and the restaurant was busier than usual. Families were talking, plates were clinking, and the smell of fresh food filled the air. In the middle of all this movement was Emily, a young waitress who always tried her best to serve everyone with kindness. She had a soft smile that made people feel welcome, even when they were having a bad day. But inside, Emily carried worries that no one could see. Emily was only 22, but life had already placed a heavy weight on her shoulders. Her mother was sick and needed expensive medical treatment. Emily worked long hours, sometimes double shifts, doing everything she could to help pay the bills. She didn't complain. She didn't show sadness on her face. She believed that if you keep going, even when life is hard, things will eventually get better. So every day, she tied her hair back, put on her apron, and walked out to the dining room with courage. The restaurant was like a second home to Emily. She knew where every plate, glass, and menu belonged. She knew which customers preferred extra napkins and which ones liked quiet corners. Some regulars even came just to see her, because her kindness made their meals feel special. But no matter how good she was, some days were more difficult than others. That day had already been tiring. She had been on her feet since early morning. The kitchen was running behind schedule, and several customers were impatient. Still, Emily moved calmly, offering refills, carrying trays, and apologizing with sincerity. Her feet ached, but she didn't slow down. Then the door opened again, and immediately the energy in the restaurant changed. Although no one said a word, a woman stepped inside, tall, dressed in expensive clothes, jewelry that sparkled even in dim indoor light, and a face that looked like it never smiled unless it was pretending. This was Mrs. Langford. She was well known in town, not because people admired her, but because people feared her. She had money, influence, and a habit of treating everyone she saw as beneath her. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she walked, each step loud as if she wanted everyone to notice her. Behind her, two women followed, quieter, almost as if they existed only to support her presence. They looked nervous, like they were used to watching every word they said around her. Emily noticed them and stepped forward with her usual warm greeting. "Good afternoon, welcome. Please follow me. I'll show you to your table." She kept her voice polite, gentle, just like always. But the moment Emily finished speaking, Mrs. Langford's eyes narrowed. She didn't thank her. She didn't smile. Instead, she looked at Emily as if she had already decided she disliked her. "Is this how you greet customers?" Mrs. Langford said sharply, as if Emily had done something terrible. Emily blinked, a bit confused but staying calm. "Yes, ma'am," she said softly. "Is there anything I can do differently for you?" Mrs. Langford raised one eyebrow, as though she had been insulted. "Your tone. It's unprofessional. And why are you slouching? Stand properly." Her voice was loud enough for nearby tables to hear. A few customers glanced up from their meals. Emily felt her cheeks grow warm, but she did exactly what she always did. She apologized politely. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. I'll do better," she replied, straightening her posture. Mrs. Langford sniffed and didn't respond, just walked ahead like she owned the place. Her friends looked apologetic, even embarrassed, but they didn't speak up. They had learned long ago that disagreeing with Mrs. Langford only led to problems. Emily guided them to a table near the window. The sunlight came through the glass, glowing against their sparkling jewelry. Emily placed menus in front of them, speaking clearly and respectfully, though her heart was already uneasy. Usually, she could sense what kind of day a person was having. But Mrs. Langford wasn't having a bad day. She simply enjoyed being difficult. "Water," Mrs. Langford said, not even bothering to ask politely. "With lemon, and make sure it's cold. Last time I came here, the water was warm. I can't stand incompetence." Emily nodded. "Of course, ma'am. I'll be right back." As she walked toward the drink station, she took a deep breath. She couldn't afford to lose her job. She couldn't afford to say anything wrong. She forced her hands to stay steady as she filled the glasses with ice and water. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her mother resting at home, pale, tired, but always smiling for Emily's sake. That thought gave Emily strength again. She returned to the table, placing the glasses carefully. For a moment, everything seemed quiet, peaceful even, but deep inside, Emily already sensed that the day was far from over, and something was about to happen that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Emily returned to the table with a gentle smile, trying to keep her voice calm and warm. "Here is your water, ma'am. If you need anything else, please let me know." She placed the glass carefully in front of Mrs. Langford, but even this small action did not go unnoticed. Mrs. Langford looked at the glass as if Emily had handed her something dirty. "You took long enough," she said sharply. Emily had only been gone for less than a minute, but she didn't argue. She simply replied softly, "My apologies, ma'am. I'll be faster next time." The two women sitting with Mrs. Langford looked uncomfortable. They avoided eye contact with Emily, as if afraid that Mrs. Langford might turn her anger towards them. They picked up their menus slowly, but Mrs. Langford didn't. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and watched Emily like she was inspecting her. "What is your name?" she asked suddenly. Emily stood up straight, even though her heartbeat had quickened. "My name is Emily, ma'am." Mrs. Langford repeated the name in a tone that didn't sound kind at all. "Emily. Chim. Do you even like your job?" Emily was caught off guard. It was such a strange, personal question, but she answered honestly without hesitation. "Yes, I do like my job," she said. "I enjoy helping customers and making them comfortable." Mrs. Langford laughed. Not a happy laugh, but a cold one. "Helping customers? You think you're important because you carry plates and smile? My dear, this is not real work. This is just something people do when they have no education or ambition." Emily's smile faded for just a moment. She felt something inside her chest tighten, but she took a slow breath and kept her voice steady. "Every job is important, ma'am," she said quietly. "We all try our best." Mrs. Langford tilted her head, studying her like she wasn't a person, but something small on the ground. You have quite the attitude, don't you?" Trying to sound wise. "Let's see if your service matches your words." She opened the menu at last, flipping the pages as if every page annoyed her. Emily stood patiently, not showing any frustration, though she could feel eyes from nearby tables watching the interaction. "I'll have the grilled chicken salad, but tell the kitchen that I do not want any dressing on it. Not even a drop. If there is even a little bit of dressing, I'll send it back," Mrs. Langford said. Emily wrote it down. "Of course, ma'am. No dressing at all. And I want the chicken to be sliced thin, very thin. If it is thick, I won't eat it," she added. "I understand," Emily said. Mrs. Langford suddenly frowned again. "You're speaking too softly. Speak properly." "I'm sorry, ma'am," Emily repeated with patience. Finally, Mrs. Langford handed the menu back, but not in a normal way. She pushed it toward Emily with 2 fingers, as if touching Emily or anything handled by her was something dirty. "Go, and don't take too long. If my food is late, I'll speak to the owner," she threatened. Emily nodded and walked away, keeping her steps steady even though her heart hurt. She went to the kitchen and passed the order to the chef, carefully explaining every detail. The chef looked sympathetic. He knew Emily always dealt with difficult customers with grace. "Hang in there, Emily," he said. "Some people just like feeling powerful." Emily smiled weakly. She tried to shake it off and focus on the work in front of her. But she couldn't ignore the feeling that the situation was building into something worse. When she returned to the dining room, she noticed Mrs. Langford looking around with a displeased expression. It was as if she was searching for something to complain about. Her eyes landed on Emily the moment she stepped closer. "Why did you take so long?" Mrs. Langford demanded, even though Emily had only been delivering food to other tables. Emily responded calmly, "I was serving other customers, ma'am. I'm here now. How can I help you?" Mrs. Langford tapped her fingers on the table with a rhythm that sounded irritated. "My napkin is folded wrong. I don't know who runs this place, but clearly, they have no standards." Emily looked at the napkin. It looked perfectly fine, but she picked it up, refolded it neatly, and placed it back gently. "Better?" she asked softly. Mrs. Langford didn't answer. Instead, she suddenly leaned forward. "You know, someone like you should be grateful for customers like me. People who give you business. Without us, you'd be nothing. You'd have no job at all." Emily felt her throat tighten. She wanted to speak back. She wanted to say that she worked hard, that she was trying, that she was doing everything she could in life. But instead, she stayed quiet. Because she knew people like Mrs. Langford didn't want conversation. They wanted control. Mrs. Langford took a slow sip of her water, watching Emily the entire time. Then she said very casually, as if it meant nothing at all, "I'm not finished with you. Just wait." Emily felt a chill go through her. Something unpleasant was coming. And deep down she already knew. This was only the beginning. The kitchen worked quickly, and soon the grilled chicken salad was ready. Emily carefully checked the plate herself. She made sure there was no dressing, the chicken slices were thin, and everything looked perfect. She took a slow breath, steadying her hands. She didn't want to make any mistakes. Not with this customer. Not today. She walked back to Mrs. Langford's table, balancing the plate gently. Her steps were quiet, controlled, and careful. When she reached the table, she smiled politely. "Here is your salad, ma'am. I hope everything is to your liking," she said softly. Mrs. Langford didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the plate for several seconds, as if searching for something to judge. She lifted a fork and poked the chicken like it was suspicious. Her friends watched with anxious eyes, holding their breath, as if they knew what might come next. Then Mrs. Langford took one bite. There was silence. A long silence. Emily waited, her heart thumping softly. Finally, Mrs. Langford placed the fork down and frowned. "The chicken is dry," she declared loudly. Emily blinked, surprised. She had checked the chicken herself. It was perfectly cooked, tender, and moist. But she could not argue. "I'm sorry if it's not to your taste, ma'am. I can ask the kitchen to—" "No," Mrs. Langford interrupted, raising her hand sharply. "I don't want another one. I want water. And make sure you carry it carefully this time. You're already clumsy enough." Her words stung, but Emily nodded and walked back to the drink station again. She filled the glass with cold water and added 2 lemon slices, just as requested. But as she turned to walk back to the table, her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, not from tiredness, but from the constant pressure of being judged and talked down to. She took a silent breath. She told herself, "Stay calm, Emily. Just a little more. You're doing fine." She moved toward the table carefully, holding the glass with steady fingers. But just as she reached the table, someone nearby laughed loudly at a joke, and the sound startled her for a split second. Her hand jerked just a little, just enough for a few drops of water to slip over the edge of the glass and fall on the table near Mrs. Langford's handbag. Only 3 drops, not even enough to wet the bag. But that was all it took. Mrs. Langford gasped dramatically and pushed her chair back so fast it made a screeching sound on the floor. Everyone in the restaurant turned to look. "Are you out of your mind?" she yelled, eyes blazing. "You almost ruined my handbag. Do you know how much this costs? More than your entire monthly salary, I'm sure." Emily quickly apologized, voice soft but shaking. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It was an accident. The bag isn't wet. I can get napkins." Mrs. Langford stood up so quickly her chair nearly tipped over. "Don't talk back to me," she snapped. Emily froze. People were watching. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked angry. Some looked sad for Emily. But no one spoke. Mrs. Langford pointed at Emily like she was pointing at something worthless on the ground. "You think you can just say sorry and everything is fine? You think your sorry means anything?" she shouted. "You disrespected me. You humiliated me." Emily shook her head gently. "No, ma'am. I didn't mean." "Oh, you did?" Mrs. Langford said, stepping closer, her voice low and venom-filled. "Girls like you need to learn your place." Emily felt her throat tighten. Her hands shook now, not from clumsiness, but from the sting of humiliation. The restaurant had gone silent. Even the kitchen noises had faded. Then, Mrs. Langford said words that cut through the room like a blade. "Neil." Emily's eyes widened. She wasn't sure she heard correctly. "What?" she whispered. "Neil," Mrs. Langford repeated, louder this time. "Kneel on the floor and apologize to me properly. Maybe then you'll learn how to behave." For a moment, Emily didn't breathe. Felt like the world had stopped. The air was heavy. The silence felt painful. Her heart pounded painfully against her ribs. Everyone was staring. Some gasped. Some shook their heads. But no one spoke. Emily's lips trembled, but she didn't fall to her knees. She stood still. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I cannot do that," she said softly. Mrs. Langford smirked, as if she had expected resistance and was eager to crush it. "Oh, you cannot?" she mocked. "Then I will have you fired. I will speak to the manager. Right now." She turned sharply and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Manager! Get the manager here immediately!" Her voice echoed through the restaurant. Emily felt her heart sink. She didn't know whether she was shaking from fear, shame, or exhaustion. She didn't know if she had just lost her job. She didn't know if life was about to get even harder. But one thing she knew, this moment was going to change everything. Something was coming, and the entire restaurant could feel it. Emily stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel every eye in the restaurant on her. It was like the air had become heavier, harder to breathe. She tried to keep her hands from shaking, but they trembled no matter how tightly she held them to her apron. Mrs. Langford stood with her arms crossed, a proud, cruel smile forming on her lips. She looked like she had already won. Like humiliating Emily was just another ordinary moment in her day. Emily tried to speak, her voice small but steady. "Ma'am, I truly didn't mean to upset you. I didn't spill on your bag. It was just a few drops on the table. I never wanted to disrespect you." But Mrs. Langford raised one finger in the air to silence her. Like Emily's voice wasn't worth hearing. "Oh, stop pretending to be innocent," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "You think I don't see people like you? Acting polite on the outside but secretly thinking you deserve respect. But you don't." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "People like you." Those words hurt more than anything else. They didn't just insult her job, they insulted her existence. Mrs. Langford stepped closer, her presence cold, towering, almost suffocating. "You are here to serve," she said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "You are below me, and when someone like me is disrespected, someone like you must kneel." Emily felt her stomach twist. Her throat tightened. The thought of kneeling in front of a room full of strangers made her chest ache with humiliation. But the thought of losing her job, the job that paid for her mother's medicine, made her knees feel weak for another reason. For a moment, she wondered if maybe she should kneel, just to make this moment pass, just to protect her mother. But then she remembered her mother's voice. Her mother, even in sickness, always told her, "Never let anyone treat you like you are less. You have a heart that tries, and that is worth more than anything." Emily swallowed hard. "No, ma'am," she said quietly but clearly. "I cannot kneel." The entire restaurant seemed to inhale at the same time. Mrs. Langford's face changed instantly. Shock, anger, rage, all flashing like lightning. "You cannot," she repeated, her voice dangerously calm. Emily didn't move. She didn't break eye contact. She didn't bow her head. "No," she repeated even softer. Mrs. Langford's jaw tightened. "Fine," she snapped. "Then I will have you removed from this place. You don't belong here. I want the manager. Now." Her voice echoed once again through the restaurant. Emily felt something heavy settle inside her chest. She didn't know what was going to happen next. Her job, her mother, everything felt uncertain. A few seconds passed that felt like minutes. Then, from the kitchen door, the manager, Mr. Patel, walked out. He was a calm, thoughtful man in his late 40s, known for being fair to his employees. He walked toward the table with a composed expression, though his eyes quickly shifted to Emily. He saw her shaking hands. He saw the fear she was trying to hide. He stopped beside Mrs. Langford and folded his hands politely. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" Mrs. Langford wasted no time. She pointed sharply at Emily. "This girl spilled water on me, disrespected me, and now refuses to kneel to apologize. I want her fired. Immediately." Emily's heart dropped. The customers around them watched, waiting, silent. Mr. Patel didn't speak right away. He didn't rush. Instead, he turned to Emily and looked into her eyes, searching quietly for the truth. There was something in his expression, understanding, maybe sadness. He then turned back to Mrs. Langford and asked, in a calm tone, "Is this what happened, ma'am?" She refused to kneel. Mrs. Langford lifted her chin proudly. "Yes, and if your restaurant has any standards, you will remove her right now." Emily felt her knees weaken. Her vision blurred just a little. She could lose everything in this moment. She waited, breath held, hands curled tightly, wishing she could disappear. Mr. Patel looked at her again, his voice gentler now. "Emily, are you all right?" he asked softly. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, but she quickly blinked them back. She shook her head just a little, not wanting to break down. "I didn't mean to spill anything," she whispered. "I apologized. I didn't want to." Before she could finish, Mrs. Langford interrupted again. "Oh, enough with the excuses. I am a paying customer. She needs to be punished. She needs to kneel." The restaurant was silent, completely silent. Everyone waited for the manager's decision. Emily braced herself for the worst. Her job, her stability, her mother's medicine. Everything felt as though it was balanced on a thin, fragile thread. And in that moment, Emily realized, no matter what came next, her dignity was still hers. Her voice was still hers. She had not knelt. She had not broken. Even if she lost everything else, she had not lost herself. And that mattered, more than anything. Mr. Patel stood silently for a moment, thinking. The restaurant was completely quiet, as if everyone's breath was held in the air. Even the sound of plates and kitchen work in the back had paused. Every eye in the room watched him, waiting to see what he would say. Mrs. Langford looked confident. She was sure the manager would take her side. People usually did. Her wealth, her name, her loud voice often made others afraid to disagree with her. She smiled slightly, almost ready to enjoy seeing Emily lose her job. Emily, standing beside the table, could feel her pulse in her ears. Her legs felt weak, and her hands were cold. She tried to hold herself steady. She didn't want to cry. She didn't want to fall apart. Whatever happened, she wanted to stay strong. But inside, her heart felt heavy and frightened. Finally, Mr. Patel spoke. "Ma'am," he said politely, "I understand that you are upset, but I need to hear directly from Emily what happened." Mrs. Langford let out a loud, angry sigh. "Why? What does it matter what she says? I already told you the truth." Mr. Patel turned his head slightly. His voice didn't change. It was calm, steady, and respectful. "It matters, ma'am. I cannot make decisions without listening to both sides. That is my responsibility." Emily looked up at him, surprised. She had expected him to simply apologize to the customer and ask her to leave. But instead, he was giving her a voice, a chance. Mrs. Langford crossed her arms tightly. She looked like she didn't like losing control even slightly. "Fine. Go on then. Let her speak." Emily took a breath. Just one. Then she spoke in a quiet voice. "I didn't mean to spill the water," she said. "It was only a few drops. Not on the bag. Only the table. I apologized. I offered to clean it. I didn't mean to disrespect anyone." She paused, her voice trembling just a little. "And I cannot kneel because I'm not doing this job to shame myself. I'm trying. I'm working. I'm just doing my best." There was no anger in her voice. No blame. Just honesty, pure and simple. But Mrs. Langford burst out laughing, loud and sharp like glass breaking. "Oh, please," she said. "Spare me the sad little story. She is just making excuses. I don't care what her reasons are. Respect must be shown. She refused. So she must be punished. Many of the customers frowned. Some exchanged looks. Some whispered. They all saw Emily's sincerity, and they had seen Mrs. Langford's behavior. Mr. Patel looked at Mrs. Langford again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry, but there was something strong and steady in his eyes. "Ma'am," Emily apologized, "and the spill was an accident. I cannot ask her to kneel. That is not how we treat people here." Mrs. Langford's face turned red. "You cannot?" she repeated, enraged. "Are you refusing to discipline your staff? I am a valued customer. I have influence. I could ruin this place." Emily felt her heart drop. She knew people like Mrs. Langford had power. Real power. And she knew what threats like that could do. But Mr. Patel didn't waver. He placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. A simple gesture, but one full of support. "I will not punish someone who did nothing wrong," he said. The restaurant was silent again. But this time, the silence felt different. Mrs. Langford's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They looked embarrassed to even be there. One of them opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she stopped, afraid of Mrs. Langford's reaction. Mrs. Langford narrowed her eyes. "So that's how it is?" she said slowly. "You think this girl deserves protection? You think she deserves respect?" Mr. Patel responded softly, but firmly, "Every human deserves respect." Emily felt tears well in her eyes, not from sadness, but from something warm. Something she had almost forgotten she still had. Dignity. Mrs. Langford's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "If you won't make her kneel," she said, leaning forward, "then I will make sure you regret it." Mr. Patel didn't react. He didn't flinch. He didn't lower his eyes. He simply said, "I will not force a person to bow to someone just because they have money." The words hung in the air like a truth no one could deny. Mrs. Langford stared at him in disbelief, as if she could not understand a reality where someone told her no. Emily looked up at Mr. Patel, and in that moment she understood something. He was not just her manager. He was someone who valued humanity more than wealth. And that would change everything. Because what happened next, no one was prepared for. Not even Mrs. Langford. Not even Emily. The moment was building, like the calm before a storm, like the breath before a powerful truth is revealed. Something big was about to happen, and the entire restaurant could feel it. The restaurant stayed silent, but the silence felt different now. It was heavy, full of tension, like the air was holding its breath. Everyone's eyes were on Mr. Patel, waiting to see what he would do next. Some people leaned forward slightly, as if they didn't want to miss a single word. Mrs. Langford looked furious. Her face had turned a shade of red that made her look almost unfamiliar. She was not used to people resisting her. She was not used to someone telling her no. She had always believed that money meant power, and power meant obedience. "You are making a mistake," she hissed, pointing at Mr. Patel. "If you think I will accept this disrespect." But before she could finish, something unexpected happened. Mr. Patel slowly turned toward Emily, and then he knelt, right there on the restaurant floor. A gasp spread through the room. Even Emily froze, her eyes widening. She did not understand what was happening. She would have expected him to defend her. She would have even understood if he asked her to step back. But this was something she never could have imagined. He knelt, gently, quietly, not with fear, not with shame, but with respect. He bowed his head slightly and said, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, "I kneel to her. Not because she is a servant, but because she is a strong, hard-working human being who deserves respect." The shock in the room was like electricity. Forks stopped in midair. People who had been eating forgot about their food. Even the cooks peeking from the kitchen doorway stood completely still. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, and tears gathered instantly in her eyes. She couldn't speak. She couldn't even breathe for a moment. She had never been defended like this before. Never in her life had someone shown her such honor. Mrs. Langford, however, looked as though she had been struck. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She had expected power. She had expected victory. She had expected to see Emily on the floor. But instead, the manager, someone in authority, was kneeling to the waitress. It flipped everything she believed about status and worth upside down. Mr. Patel lifted his head and looked directly at Mrs. Langford. "You asked her to kneel," he said, his voice calm and steady. "But kneeling is not a sign of weakness. It is a gesture of respect. And the only one in this room deserving of such respect is the person who works tirelessly with kindness in her heart." Emily felt tears spill down her cheeks. She had kept her feelings locked inside for so long. The exhaustion, the pressure, the fear of failing her mother. And now someone had spoken for her. Someone had stood up. Someone had shown the world that she was not invisible. Mrs. Langford looked around, realizing that the room was no longer on her side. People were staring at her, not with admiration, but with disappointment. Some were shaking their heads. Some were frowning. Some were whispering to each other. Her friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their faces were pale. They knew what this meant. This moment would not be forgotten. People would talk about it. People would remember. And they did not want to be on the wrong side of the story. Mrs. Langford finally found her voice, but it was weaker now. "This is ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. I will not." But one of her friends, a woman with kind eyes who had been quiet the entire time, finally spoke. "Enough, Clara," she said softly. Mrs. Langford turned sharply, shocked that her friend had dared speak. But the woman continued, her voice gentle yet firm. "You've gone too far." She apologized. "It was a small accident. No one deserves to be treated like this." The words hung in the air. Slowly, others nodded. A man at a nearby table said, "She's right." Someone else added, "It's just wrong to treat people like that." Mrs. Langford looked around and realized she no longer had control. Her power had disappeared. Her confidence cracked. For the first time that day, she looked unsure. Mr. Patel rose slowly to his feet. He didn't look angry. He didn't look proud. He simply looked human. "Ma'am," he said, "you are welcome to enjoy your meal peacefully. But if you cannot treat our staff with respect, I will have to ask you to leave." The room waited. Emily wiped her tears quietly. Mrs. Langford's hand clenched around her purse strap. She opened her mouth, but no words came. She had lost. She knew it. She turned sharply, her heels clicking loudly as she walked toward the exit, her pride dragging behind her like a shadow. Her friends hesitated, then followed her, heads lowered in shame. The restaurant stayed silent for a few more seconds. And then, suddenly, someone began to clap. Then another, and another, until the room was filled with applause. Not loud, not wild, just warm, real, human. Emily stood there, tears falling silently, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt seen. She felt valued. She felt dignity. And that was more powerful than anything money could ever buy. After the applause slowly faded, the restaurant started returning to normal. But the feeling in the air remained warm and gentle, like a soft hug that stayed even after the arms had let go. Emily stood still for a moment, trying to understand everything that had just happened. Her heart was still beating faster than usual, and her hands were shaking slightly. She felt overwhelmed, but in a good way. Mr. Patel placed a hand on her shoulder, not too firm, just enough to let her know he was there. "You're all right?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, though her voice trembled. "Yes, I didn't expect any of that." He smiled warmly. "You deserved it." Those words settled deep inside her. She had heard people say nice things before, but they always felt empty, like they were just words. But this time it felt real. Someone didn't just say she deserved respect. He had shown it to everyone. Emily went back to work because that was who she was. She didn't want special treatment. She didn't want to act like a hero or victim. She just wanted to do her job. And for the first time, people looked at her differently. With kindness, with admiration, even with a hint of apology for ever assuming she was just a waitress. A couple at a corner table called her over. "You handled that situation with such grace," the older woman said. "You should be proud." Emily smiled shyly and thanked them before returning to the kitchen to grab their order. And as she moved, whispers followed her, but not the bad kind. Whispers of respect. Whispers of support. Meanwhile, outside the restaurant, Mrs. Langford sat in her luxury car, trembling with anger. Her pride was wounded, something she was not used to. Her friends sat uncomfortably beside her, unsure what to say. The humiliation stayed with her like a stain she couldn't remove. But that story continues later. Inside, Emily continued working until her shift ended. She was packing her bag when Mr. Patel approached her again. There was something thoughtful in his expression, something deeper than just gratitude or respect. "Emily," he said quietly, "I know things have been difficult. Your mother is still in the hospital, right?" Emily's hands froze around her bag strap. She nodded slowly. "Yes, she is. The treatment is expensive. But I'm managing." She said she was managing, but they both knew she was struggling more than anyone could see. Mr. Patel paused for a moment as if choosing his words carefully. Then he spoke gently. "You don't have to fight everything alone." She blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and took out a business card. It was simple, white with gold lettering, very formal. "The owner of this restaurant," he explained. "He's a good man, and he respects people who work with honesty and heart." Then he looked directly into her eyes. "I told him about you, and he wants to meet you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Meet me? Why, I'm just a—" "Don't say it," he interrupted softly. "You are not just anything. You are hardworking, responsible, kind, and courageous. People like that deserve opportunities. And he wants to offer you one." Emily took the card slowly, like it was something fragile. Her fingers trembled. She couldn't speak for a moment. She had spent so long struggling, balancing work shifts, hospital visits, bills, tears, that she had almost forgotten that life could change. "Take your time," Mr. Patel said. "Think about it. You don't have to decide now. But I believe this could be something very good for you." Emily nodded, her voice stuck behind emotion. "Thank you truly." As she walked home that evening, the city lights reflected in her eyes. Every step felt lighter, like the world was no longer pressing her down. The card in her hand felt like hope. Real hope. Not the weak kind that disappears when life gets hard, but the kind that feels strong and warm inside. When she reached home, her mother was awake in bed, looking tired but smiling softly when she saw her. Emily sat beside her, held her hand, and talked about her day, leaving out the painful part. She didn't want to worry her, but she told her about the applause, about the respect, about the opportunity. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, not sad tears, proud ones. "My daughter," she whispered, "you have always had a strong heart. The world is finally seeing it." Emily leaned her head gently against her mother's shoulder, their hands intertwined. She felt safe. She felt loved. And she felt something new, something she had not felt in a long time. The future did not scare her anymore. Outside the window, the city continued moving. Cars passing, people talking, lights flickering, as if nothing had changed. But for Emily, everything had. And the story was not finished yet, because the next day, something unexpected would happen again. The next morning, Emily woke up earlier than usual. There was something different inside her, a quiet strength, a confidence she had not felt in a long time. She looked at the business card again, the one Mr. Patel had given her. It still felt unreal that someone wanted to meet her for an opportunity. She carefully placed it in her bag, got ready, and left for work. The streets were lively, as always. People rushed to buses, students stepped out of homes with backpacks, vendors opened their shops. Life looked the same, yet for Emily, everything felt new. When she entered the restaurant, her co-workers greeted her with warm smiles. Some of them gave her supportive pats on the shoulder. It was a small gesture, but to her it meant the world. For the first time, she did not feel invisible. She tied her apron and began preparing for the day. While she worked, she kept thinking about what Mr. Patel had said. She had spent so much of her life believing her place was small, that she only existed to serve others. But now, she was beginning to see herself differently. Around noon, the restaurant doors opened and a familiar but unexpected figure walked in. It was Mrs. Langford, but she did not look like the same woman from yesterday. She was not standing tall. She was not holding her chin high. Her eyes looked tired, and her expression held something Emily had never seen on her face before: humility. People noticed her immediately. The restaurant grew quiet again, but this time it was not tense. It was curious. Emily felt her heart skip. She did not know what to expect. Would there be more insults? More drama? Or something else entirely? Mrs. Langford slowly walked to Emily's counter. She stopped. They looked at each other. This time, there was no anger in her eyes, only regret. "Emily?" she began softly, her voice shaking. "I came to apologize." Those words hung in the air, heavy and real. Emily blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. "I behaved terribly yesterday," Mrs. Langford continued. "I was angry, stressed, and I took my frustrations out on you. That was wrong. I hurt you, and I want to say I am truly sorry." The entire restaurant listened, stunned. Emily didn't speak at first. She looked at Mrs. Langford, not with hatred, not with pride, but with understanding. She knew what pain looked like. Sometimes people who were hurting hurt others too. Emily took a small breath. "Thank you for apologizing," she said softly. "It means a lot." Mrs. Langford's shoulders relaxed. A tear slipped down her cheek. She nodded, then turned to leave. But before she stepped out, she said one more thing, something no one expected. "Your strength taught me something yesterday. I will remember it." And then she left quietly. The restaurant remained silent for a moment. Then slowly, people began to smile at Emily. Not clapping this time, something even better: respect through silence. Respect that did not need noise. Later that day, Mr. Patel called Emily into his office. He was smiling in a way that showed he was proud. "Are you ready to meet the restaurant owner?" he asked. Emily nodded. They left the restaurant together and drove to a tall office building in the city center. The lobby was grand, with glass walls and marble floors. Emily felt nervous, but Mr. Patel walked beside her calmly, and that gave her comfort. They entered a private office where a well-dressed man in his late 50s sat behind a desk. He stood up and greeted Emily warmly. "I've heard a lot about you," he said kindly. "Sit, please." Emily sat, her hands resting lightly on her knees. "I built this restaurant chain from nothing," the owner continued. "I respect people who work with sincerity and dignity. And yesterday, you showed remarkable strength." Emily listened, unsure where this was going. "I want to offer you a scholarship," he said. Her breath caught. "A scholarship?" she repeated. "Yes," he smiled. "You mentioned you once wanted to study hospitality management. I want to help you complete that education. We will cover all your fees. And when you finish, there will be a management position waiting for you here." Emily stared at him, completely overwhelmed. Her dream, the dream she had buried under bills and responsibilities, was being given back to her. Tears filled her eyes, but they were warm tears, happy tears. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just say yes," he replied gently. Emily nodded, a small but bright smile breaking across her face. "Yes." When she returned home that night, she shared the news with her mother. Her mother held her, crying softly, whispering prayers of gratitude. Emily hugged her tightly, knowing everything she had endured, every struggle, every tear, every long shift, had led to this moment. Life had changed, not because she was loud, not because she fought with anger, but because she stood with grace, patience, and dignity. The world finally saw her worth. And from that day on, she walked with her head held just a little higher, not out of pride, but out of knowing who she truly was. Someone strong, someone worthy, someone who did not need to kneel.